ancient Greece, a land of stunning beauty, where gods and heroes walked side by side with mortals, and myths were as real as the olive trees that covered its mountains. This was a world where the lines between myth and reality blurred. Imagine a place where wisdom and war, democracy and dictatorship, and freedom and fate all converged into one small patch of earth, only to explode outward, changing the world forever. In the valleys and coastlines of this rugged land, mighty city-states rose and fell. Sparta, the warrior state, where courage was forged in childhood and every citizen was trained to embrace battle. Athens, the birthplace of democracy, a city bursting with art, philosophy, and new ideas. But this wasn't just a story of heroes and kings. The Greeks were masters of innovation. They questioned everything: how we should live, what justice means, and why the stars move the way they do. They laid the foundation for science, philosophy, literature, and even politics. Yet, for every philosopher who sought truth, there was a priest telling of God's wrath. For every scientist asking why, there was a myth that warned against challenging the divine. Take Prometheus, the titan who defied Zeus to bring fire to humanity, or Orpheus, who journeyed into the underworld itself for love. And as Greek civilization grew, so did their ambitions. Battles erupted, empires clashed, and heroes rose, only to fall again. From the daring Spartans standing against the mighty Persian army to Alexander the Great leading his soldiers to the edge of the known world, ancient Greece was no stranger to conflict. So, what is it about ancient Greece that still captivates us? Is it the enduring wisdom of Socrates and Plato, the fearless spirit of Leonidas and his 300, or the myths of gods who were as flawed and passionate as the humans who worshipped them? Tonight, we'll dive deep into the story of Greece. We'll walk through the courts of Athens, march with the Spartans into battle, and stand shoulder to shoulder with Alexander as he crosses continents. We'll uncover the secrets of a people whose legacy echoes through every corner of our world today. But before we dive in, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification icon so you never miss an exciting adventure through history. Early Greece and Minoan civilization, 1400 BCE. The Minoan civilization, which flourished from around 2000 to 1400 BCE, is considered the first advanced civilization in Europe, and it emerged on the island of Crete, strategically located in the Aegean Sea. Crete's central position in the eastern Mediterranean allowed the Minoans to establish extensive trade networks, connecting them to powerful civilizations of the time, including Egypt, Mesopotamia, and Anatolia. Through these networks, the Minoans engaged in the exchange of goods, ideas, and cultural practices, which not only enriched their society, but also spread their influence across the region. This trading prowess contributed significantly to the prosperity and complexity of Minoan society, making them one of the most sophisticated civilizations of their time. Minoan civilization was marked by the development of large, complex palatial centers, with the Peshon Palace of Knossos being the most prominent. This palace, covering several acres, functioned as an administrative, religious, and economic hub, showcasing the Minoans' advanced architectural skills and organizational capabilities. The Palace of Knossos featured multi-storied buildings, intricate frescoes, advanced plumbing systems, and storerooms filled with goods, indicating a high level of economic and social organization. Unlike other ancient cultures that heavily fortified their cities, the Minoans left their palaces and cities relatively unfortified, suggesting a period of relative peace and stability, or perhaps a confidence in their naval power to protect the island from invasions. The Minoans' early development is further evident in their artwork and artifacts, which reveal a culture deeply connected to nature, the sea, and the gods they worshipped. Minoan frescoes, depicting dolphins, sea creatures, and vibrant scenes of bull leaping, showcase their reverence for life and natural forces. Their religious practices, as seen in the artifacts left behind, suggest a society with elaborate spiritual beliefs centered around fertility and agricultural abundance, which were essential to their survival and prosperity on Crete. Through these palatial centers, trade networks, and cultural developments, the Minoans established a civilization that would not only define the early history of the Aegean, but also leave an indelible mark on later Greek culture and mythology. The Minoan civilization reached impressive heights in culture and achievements, showcasing a society that was both advanced and artistically rich. Minoan architecture reflected their sophistication, with large, multi-storied palaces like Knossos featuring advanced plumbing systems, which included drainage and fresh water supplies, a rarity in the ancient world. These palaces were decorated with vibrant frescoes that depicted scenes from nature, religious rituals, and daily life. Minoan artists frequently painted animals, particularly sea creatures such as dolphins and octopuses, reflecting the civilization's strong connection to the sea and emphasizing its marine-based economy and lifestyle. Bulls were another recurring motif in Minoan art, likely connected to religious symbolism and possibly representing a god associated with strength and vitality. This intricate and symbolic art hinted at a complex belief system and an appreciation for life, beauty, and nature. Minoan society, based on the archaeological evidence, appears to have been relatively peaceful and prosperous. They enjoyed a well-organized economy centered on trade, agriculture, and craftsmanship, with limited evidence of fortifications in their settlements, suggesting that conflict may have been rare on the island of Crete. The Minoans' religious practices extended beyond palaces and temples as they performed rituals in sacred caves and peak sanctuaries, locations that connected them to the natural world. These sites were often found on mountain peaks or in caves, and offerings such as pottery, figurines, and food were left for the gods in an attempt to ensure harmony with nature and secure fertility for their crops and livestock. This nature-based worship emphasized a symbiotic relationship with the environment, and animal sacrifices were performed to appeal to the gods for agricultural prosperity. The decline of the Minoan civilization was likely due to a combination of natural disasters and foreign invasions. Around 1600 BCE, a massive volcanic eruption on the nearby island of Bacthera, modern-day Santorini, triggered earthquakes and tsunamis, which severely impacted Crete's infrastructure and agricultural systems. The eruption covered Crete in volcanic ash, affecting its economy and weakening the society's stability. This catastrophe may have inspired to Plato's legend of Atlantis, which describes an advanced civilization that was destroyed in a sudden disaster. Although the Minoans were resilient, the aftermath of Thera's eruption left them vulnerable to external threats. Around 1450 BCE, the Mycenaeans, a warrior culture from mainland Greece, took advantage of this vulnerability and gradually took control of Crete. They imposed their own culture and administrative systems, marking the end of the independent Minoan civilization and shifting control of the island's strategic trade routes. The legacy of the Minoan civilization was profound, with Minoan art, religious symbols, and architectural styles significantly influencing the Mycenaean civilization and later classical Greece. The artistic motifs of dolphins, bulls, and elaborate frescoes found in Mycenaean and Greek art trace their roots to Minoan culture. The mythology surrounding Crete also influenced Greek culture, with tales like the Minotaur and the Labyrinth surviving into classical Greek literature. Additionally, the Minoan civilization's downfall, possibly inspiring the Atlantis myth, remains a poignant symbol of the fleeting nature of power and prosperity in human history. Through their contributions to art, architecture, and myth, the Minoans left a lasting mark on Mediterranean history and the broader Western cultural heritage. Mycenaean Greece, 1600–1100 BCE. The Mycenaean civilization emerged as a powerful culture on the Greek mainland around 1600 BCE and lasted until approximately 1100 BCE. Known as the first advanced civilization in mainland Greece, Mycenae became the center of power and influence, giving its name to the wider Mycenaean culture that dominated much of Greece during this era. The Mycenaeans built fortified cities such as Mycenae, Tiryns, and Pylos, characterized by their thick protective walls made of massive stone blocks. This architecture earned the name Cyclopean, as later Greeks believed only the giant Cyclopes could have moved stones of such enormous size. Unlike the relatively peaceful Minoan civilization, the Mycenaeans were a warrior society led by kings who often gained power and prestige through military conquest, treasure acquisition, and controlling strategic trade routes. These warrior kings ruled from their palaces, which also functioned as administrative centers, housing stores of grain, olive oil, wine, and treasures that reflected their wealth and might. A defining event in Mycenaean history is the legendary Trojan War, a conflict between the Greeks and the city of Troy, located on the coast of what is now Turkey. This war, immortalized in Homer's epic poem, the Iliad, has captured the imagination for centuries, blending myth, legend, and possible historical events. According to Homer, the war began when Paris, a Trojan prince, abducted Helen, the wife of the Spartan king Menelaus. This act sparked outrage among the Greek kings, leading to a massive coalition of Greek forces sailing to Troy to retrieve Helen. Key figures in this myth include Agamemnon, the king of Mycenae and brother of Menelaus, who led the Greek forces, and the legendary heroes Achilles, Odysseus, and Ajax, who fought on the Greek side. The Iliad focuses on a short period during the final year of the war, detailing fierce battles, personal rivalries, and tragic losses. While the Iliad is steeped in mythology, featuring interventions by gods and goddesses, some historians believe the Trojan War may have been inspired by real conflicts over control of trade routes in the Aegean and Black Sea. Archaeological evidence at the site of ancient Troy suggests that a city there was destroyed by war around the time the Mycenaeans were active, lending some credibility to the idea of a historical basis for the legendary war. Decline of the Mycenaean civilization remains one of the great mysteries of ancient history. Around 1200 BCE, the Mycenaean centers began to fall into disrepair, and many of their palaces were destroyed by fire. Archaeologists have proposed various theories to explain this collapse, but no single cause has been definitively proven. Some suggest that internal strife, such as power struggles among the ruling class or a series of rebellions, could have weakened Mycenaean society from within. Others argue that natural disasters, such as earthquakes, may have damaged the infrastructure of their cities, making them vulnerable. Another possibility is the arrival of the so-called Sea Peoples, mysterious groups of seafaring invaders who ravaged parts of the Mediterranean during this period. These invaders may have attacked Mycenaean cities, leading to widespread destruction and contributing to the civilization's downfall. The decline of Mycenaean Greece ultimately led to the key Greek Dark Ages, c. 1100–800 BCE, a period marked by reduced population, loss of literacy, and general social decline. The sophisticated palace economy collapsed, trade networks disappeared, and the Mycenaeans' linear B writing system was forgotten. Art and monumental architecture diminished as local communities became more isolated, and much of the cultural progress achieved during the Mycenaean period was lost. This dark period lasted several centuries, and while it may have been a time of hardship and regression, it also set the stage for the later rebirth of Greek culture. During the Greek Dark Ages, oral traditions preserved stories of the Mycenaean age, including the Trojan War, which were eventually recorded in Homer's Iliad and Odyssey. These stories kept the memory of Mycenaean Greece alive and inspired future generations, ultimately helping to shape the values and identity of classical Greek civilization that would emerge in the centuries to follow. The Mycenaean civilization left a profound legacy, not only in Greek mythology and epic poetry, but also in the foundational structure of later Greek society, where the ideals of heroism, honor, and loyalty, so central to Mycenaean warriors, would remain integral to Greek identity for centuries. Through their monumental architecture, sophisticated trade networks, and complex social hierarchy, the Mycenaeans established themselves as a formidable power in the ancient world and left an enduring mark on the history and culture of Greece. The Greek Dark Ages, 1100–800 BCE. The Greek Dark Ages, spanning roughly from 1100 to 800 BCE, was a period of significant decline and isolation in Greek history that followed the fall of the Mycenaean civilization. It was a time marked by reduced population, loss of literacy, and a general contraction of Greek culture. The collapse of the Mycenaean palace centers around 1200 BCE meant that the intricate administrative systems that once governed Greece were no longer functioning. As the palatial complexes crumbled and people migrated, Greece entered a phase of fragmentation where communities became smaller, more isolated, and largely self-sustaining. In these centuries of cultural decline, there was an overall regression in the quality of art, architecture, and technology. Without a central authority to support monumental construction, large-scale buildings disappeared, replaced by more modest, utilitarian structures. Pottery and other crafts lost their earlier refinement as artisans reverted to simpler, more basic designs. The intricately crafted frescoes and luxurious artifacts of the Mycenaean era became relics of the past, as resources became scarcer and survival took precedence over artistic achievement. During this time, literacy was also lost. The Mycenaeans had used the Linear B script, primarily for administrative purposes, but with the fall of their society, this early form of writing vanished. Greece became an illiterate society, and knowledge was preserved instead through oral traditions. In the absence of written records, oral poets, or bards, became crucial figures in preserving and transmitting Greek cultural knowledge, stories, and values. Storytellers would travel from village to village, recounting tales of heroism, gods, and mythical events from memory. This oral tradition would keep alive the legends of Mycenaean Greece, including stories of the Trojan War, the mighty heroes like Achilles and Odysseus, and the divine interventions of gods like Zeus, Athena, and Apollo. One of the most celebrated figures to emerge from this oral tradition is Homer, whose epic poems, the Iliad and the Odyssey, capture a deep sense of the cultural heritage passed down from the Mycenaean age. These epic poems are not mere entertainments. They served as vessels of moral and social values, teaching Greeks about honor, bravery, loyalty, and the consequences of hubris. Homer's tales were recited, memorized, and cherished by the Greeks, and they kept alive the ideals and myths of a bygone age, acting as a bridge between the Mycenaean era and the future Greek city-states. Though Homer is traditionally credited with these epics, it's likely that these stories evolved over generations, refined and expanded by multiple poets and storytellers, each adding their own touch to the grand narrative. Another key feature of the Dark Ages was the pure isolation of communities, which led to the development of distinct local identities and customs. Because of limited contact with the outside world and the decline of long-distance trade, each Greek community evolved independently, with its own traditions, dialect, and governance. This localism, however, would lay the groundwork for what later became Greek polis, or city-state. The sense of belonging to a specific community became foundational to Greek identity, and each polis began to see itself as distinct, even as they retained shared cultural values. While later Greek city-states would foster rivalries, particularly Athens and Sparta, their development during the Dark Ages created a deeply rooted attachment to local autonomy and self-governance. Around 900 BCE, however, signs of a recovery began to appear, marking Greece's slow emergence from the Dark Ages. Trade gradually resumed, allowing the exchange of goods and ideas with other cultures. Contact with the Phoenicians, an advanced seafaring people, played a critical role in this renewal. The Phoenicians, who were renowned for their trade networks and innovations in navigation, introduced the Greeks to a new writing system, the Phoenician alphabet. This alphabet, unlike the complex scripts of the Mycenaeans, was more accessible and adaptable, providing a foundation for what would become the Greek alphabet. The adoption of this alphabet, with modifications to include vowels, enabled the Greeks to reintroduce literacy to their society, allowing them to record stories, laws, religious practices, and philosophical ideas for the first time since the fall of Mycenaean civilization. With the ability to write once more, Greek culture experienced a literary and intellectual revival. This resurgence of literacy fueled the preservation and innovation of Greek cultural expression, as poets and philosophers began to capture the oral traditions that had survived the Dark Ages. By the 8th century BCE, Greece was transitioning from a period of cultural isolation and regression into a phase of dynamic growth and expansion, laying the foundations for what would eventually become the Archaic period, c. 800 to 480 BCE. It was in this period that the first Greek colonies were established, spreading Greek influence across the Mediterranean and fostering a shared Hellenic identity. The revival of East trade also allowed for greater contact with civilizations like the Egyptians and Mesopotamians, from whom the Greeks learned advancements in art, science, and technology. Influences from these cultures enriched Greek art, architecture, and religious practices, contributing to the synthesis of ideas that would define later Greek civilization. Meanwhile, social and political systems began to evolve as well. As communities grew and prospered, there was a shift towards more structured forms of governance, eventually leading to the establishment of the Greek city-states, each with its own form of political organization. This marked the beginning of JANCIENT Greek democracy, with citizens taking a more active role in governing their communities. The Archaic period, 800 to 500 BCE. The Archaic period, 800 to 500 BCE, was a pivotal era in the history of ancient Greece, marked by the emergence of powerful city-states, policies including Athens and Sparta, which would come to define much of Greek culture, governance, and military prowess in the centuries that followed. These two city-states, though both Greek, had distinct cultures, political systems, and ways of life that shaped their citizens' identities and their interactions with each other. The connection between Athens and Sparta was not only marked by their contrasts, but also by their significant military and political conflicts, the most famous of which was the Peloponnesian War, 431 to 404 BCE. Sparta, the warrior state. Sparta, located in the southeastern part of the Peloponnesian Peninsula, was a society deeply rooted in military discipline and the ideal of warrior prowess. It was one of the most powerful and feared city-states in ancient Greece, known for its strict social structure and the elite status of its warriors, the Spartiates. Social structure and government. Spartan society was divided into three main classes: the Spartiates, the full citizens and soldiers; the Perioikoi, free non-citizens who lived in surrounding villages and were responsible for trade and industry; and the Helots, state-owned serfs who worked the land and served the Spartiates. The Spartiates were highly militarized, with the primary role of a Spartan male being to serve in the army. Spartan government was a unique mixture of monarchy, oligarchy, and democracy. It had two kings from separate royal families who served as military commanders, while a council of elders, the Gerousia, consisting of 28 men over the age of 60, advised them. The Apella, an assembly of Spartan citizens, voted on major decisions, and the ephors, 5 elected officials, held significant power, overseeing the kings and ensuring the stability of the society. Spartan education and military training. From a young age, Spartan boys were trained in the agoge, a rigorous and harsh education system that emphasized physical endurance, obedience, combat skills, and discipline. At the age of 7, boys left their homes to live in barracks, where they were subjected to strict training, including endurance tests, mock battles, and survival exercises. The goal was to produce soldiers who were not only physically fit, but mentally tough and loyal to the Spartan state above all. For girls, education was also focused on physical fitness, as Spartan women were expected to bear strong children who could serve as warriors. They were encouraged to participate in sports and physical activities to ensure they were healthy and capable of raising the next generation of soldiers. Spartan beliefs and culture. The Spartan worldview revolved around the ideals of discipline, obedience, and austerity. The concept of arete, excellence, was central to their ethos, and it was believed that excellence was achieved through rigorous training and a life of simplicity. Luxury and indulgence were seen as weaknesses that could corrupt the warrior spirit. The Spartans also worshipped gods such as Apollo and Artemis, with religious practices deeply entwined with military life. The Peloponnesian War, Sparta's most significant conflict, came with Athens during the Peloponnesian War, 431 to 404 BCE, a brutal and protracted conflict between the two city-states. The war arose from tensions between Athens' growing naval power and Sparta's military strength on land. The war, which lasted nearly 30 years, involved multiple shifts in power, alliances, and tactics, ultimately resulting in Spartan victory. However, the war left Greece weakened and divided, paving the way for later conquests. Athens, the birthplace of democracy. Athens, located on the coast of the Aegean Sea, was the cultural and intellectual heart of ancient Greece. It became a powerful city-state through its naval superiority and its democratic political system, which was radically different from that of Sparta. Political structure. Athens is best known for its development of democracy. Although earlier forms of governance existed in the city, it was during the 6th century BCE that major reforms were introduced by leaders such as Solon and Cleisthenes. Solon, circa 630 to 560 BCE, was a statesman who implemented reforms to address the social and economic inequalities in Athens. He is credited with abolishing debt slavery and introducing a legal system that was more equitable. Solon also reorganized the political structure, creating a council that allowed more people to participate in governance. Cleisthenes, circa 570 to 508 BCE, is considered the father of Athenian democracy. His reforms expanded upon Solon's work by reorganizing the city into 10 tribes, each with its own council. This allowed a broader segment of the population to participate in decision-making, laying the foundation for Athenian democracy. Athens was governed by an assembly, the ecclesia, in which all male citizens over the age of 18 could participate in debates and decisions about laws, war, and foreign policy. The Bouli, a council of 500 citizens chosen by lot, was responsible for the day-to-day running of the state, and public officials were often chosen by random selection to ensure that political power remained more equally distributed. Athens' education and culture. Athenian life was defined by intellectual and artistic pursuits. Citizens, especially the wealthy, were encouraged to engage in philosophy, arts, and sciences. Great thinkers like Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle emerged from Athens, and their ideas about politics, ethics, and metaphysics would profoundly influence Western thought. Athenians placed great importance on the arts, particularly theatre, and many of the great Greek playwrights, such as Sophocles and Euripides, came from Athens. The Acropolis and the Parthenon are monumental symbols of Athenian devotion to the gods, particularly Athena, their patron goddess. Athenian women, however, had limited rights compared to men. They were typically confined to the domestic sphere, managing the household and raising children, though they were still responsible for religious ceremonies and could own property in certain cases. Beliefs and lifestyle. Athenians valued education, intellectualism, and participation in civic life. The idea of the polis was central to their identity. The city-state was seen not only as a political entity, but as a community of citizens bound together by shared interests and common goals. Freedom and the participation of citizens in decision-making were seen as core elements of Athenian life, but this freedom was only granted to male citizens, excluding women, slaves, and foreigners. The relationship between Athens and Sparta is one of the most fascinating and complex aspects of ancient Greek history, marked by a mix of rivalry, competition, and occasional cooperation. Both city-states, though part of the same larger Greek world, had vastly different ways of life, political structures, and military strategies, which often put them at odds. Let's dive deeper into their differences, the context of their conflicts, and their key wars, especially the Peloponnesian War, which had profound consequences on the course of Greek history. Cultural and political differences between Athens and Sparta. Athens, the birthplace of democracy and culture. Athens, located on the Athenian peninsula in the region of Attica, was a city-state known for its emphasis on culture, philosophy, arts, and the development of democracy. In Athens, the ideal citizen was one who was educated in a broad range of subjects, including rhetoric, science, philosophy, and the arts. The Athenian model of democracy gave a significant portion of the population, free male citizens, the power to participate directly in government decisions. This participatory form of governance was radically different from the oligarchic or monarchical systems common in other parts of Greece. Athenian society was focused on intellectual achievements, and the city became the home of philosophers like Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle, whose ideas would shape Western philosophy for centuries. Athens also placed a high value on its navy, which became one of the strongest in Greece, giving it the ability to dominate the seas and establish an empire through the Delian League, a military alliance that Athens led. Sparta, on the other hand, located in the region of Laconia in the southeastern Peloponnesian Peninsula, was famous for its military discipline, austerity, and total devotion to the warrior ethos. The Spartan way of life was centered on creating the perfect soldier. Spartan citizens, known as Spartiates, were raised to be warriors from a very young age, undergoing a harsh military training program called the agoge, which emphasized physical endurance, obedience, and mental toughness. Sparta had a unique mixed constitution with two kings from two royal families who served as military commanders, a council of elders, the Gerousia, who advised the kings, and an assembly of Spartan citizens, the Apella, that voted on key decisions. The day-to-day government was overseen by 5 ephors, who were elected annually and wielded considerable power. Spartan society was built around militaristic values and self-discipline. Unlike Athens, which celebrated individual achievement, Sparta prioritized the collective strength and well-being of the state over all else. While women in most Greek city-states had few rights, Spartan women had more freedoms. They were expected to be physically fit, as their primary role was to bear strong children who could grow up to be soldiers. In contrast to Athenian women, Spartan women were given more opportunities to own property and were involved in the broader social and economic life of Sparta. The difference in military strategies between Athens and Sparta was perhaps the most pronounced. Athens was a naval power, using its fleet to project influence across the Aegean and Mediterranean, while Sparta was a land-based military power, with its well-trained hoplites, heavily armed infantry, known for their discipline and bravery on the battlefield. While Athens often relied on strategic alliances and its powerful navy, Sparta depended on its land forces and its formidable hoplite soldiers who were central to their military prowess. The Persian Wars, 499 to 449 BCE. The Persian Wars marked one of the few moments in Greek history when Athens and Sparta set aside their rivalry to face a common external enemy, the mighty Persian Empire, which threatened to conquer all of Greece. Battle of Marathon, 490 BCE. The first major confrontation took place at Marathon, where the Athenians, vastly outnumbered, managed to defeat the Persian army. Although the Athenians were the primary force in the battle, the Plataeans, an ally of Athens, also played a significant role. The victory at Marathon became a symbol of Athenian courage and strategy, cementing their place as a dominant military force in Greece. Battle of Salamis, 480 BCE. The Battle of Salamis was a naval battle that took place after the Persian army, under King Xerxes I, invaded Greece. The Athenians, under the leadership of Themistocles, played a central role in the defeat of the Persian navy, sinking a large portion of the Persian fleet. Though Sparta was instrumental in the Battle of Plataea, 479 BCE, where the Persian army was defeated on land, it was the Athenians who dominated the naval fight, preserving the independence of Greece from Persian control. Although Athens and Sparta had different approaches to warfare, their cooperation against the Persian Empire marked a brief moment of unity between the two city-states. However, after the Persian threat was repelled, tensions between Athens and Sparta resurfaced, leading to further conflict. The Peloponnesian War, 431 to 404 BCE. The Peloponnesian War was the defining conflict between Athens and Sparta. It was a brutal, protracted war that lasted nearly 30 years and changed the course of Greek history. The war began in 431 BCE due to escalating tensions between the two cities, and was fundamentally a clash of two competing ways of life: Athenian democracy and imperialism versus Spartan militarism and oligarchy. Causes of the war. The conflict was precipitated by Athens' growing power through the Delian League, a coalition of Greek city-states established to protect against Persian invasion. Athens transformed the league into an empire, with its control over the other member states. This expansion alarmed Sparta and its allies in the Peloponnesian League, who feared the growing influence of Athens in the Greek world. The Archidamian War, 431 to 421 BCE. Named after the Spartan king Archidamus II, this phase was primarily a war of attrition, with Athens relying on its superior navy and the defensive walls of the city, while Sparta and its allies tried to destroy the Athenian countryside. The Athenians, under the leadership of Pericles, managed to avoid direct confrontation with Sparta's superior land forces. But the war took a toll on Athens, particularly due to a devastating plague. The Sicilian expedition, 1415 to 1413 BCE. In one of Athens' most disastrous military campaigns, Athens launched an expedition to Sicily to conquer the city-state of Syracuse. The campaign ended in utter failure, with the entire fleet and army being destroyed, weakening Athens considerably. The Ionian or Decelean War, 413 to 404 BCE. Sparta, with the support of Persia, built a fortified base at Deceleia in the Athenian territory and used Persian funds to build a navy capable of challenging Athenian supremacy at sea. Despite a brief resurgence in Athenian fortunes, Sparta ultimately defeated Athens by cutting off its grain supply from the Black Sea and engaging in a series of decisive naval battles. Sparta emerged victorious in the war, and Athens was forced to surrender in 404 BCE. The war had devastating consequences for both city-states. Athens' democracy was briefly overthrown, and a pro-Spartan oligarchy was installed, while Sparta gained short-lived hegemony over Greece. However, the Peloponnesian War left the Greek world severely weakened, paving the way for the rise of new powers like Thebes and later Macedon under Philip II and his son Alexander the Great. Aftermath of the Peloponnesian War and the decline of Athens and Sparta. After the Peloponnesian War, Athens' power had been greatly diminished. The city-state never fully recovered from the war's economic and social damage, and its political system became unstable. In the 4th century BCE, Thebes briefly rose to prominence, challenging both Athens and Sparta for dominance. Though Sparta emerged victorious in the Peloponnesian War, it too was weakened by the conflict. The war had exhausted Spartan resources, and their victory was short-lived. Internal strife and conflict with other Greek city-states, such as Thebes, led to the eventual decline of Spartan hegemony. The connection between Athens and Sparta was defined by a mix of admiration, rivalry, and conflict. While they collaborated during the Persian Wars, their deep ideological differences and competing ambitions led to the devastating Peloponnesian War, which ultimately weakened both city-states. In the end, Athens and Sparta were unable to maintain their dominance, and other Greek powers rose to fill the void. Their stories, however, continue to shape the historical and cultural legacy of ancient Greece. The Classical period, 500 to 323 BCE. The Classical period of ancient Greece, spanning from 500 BCE to 323 BCE, marks a time of extraordinary development in Greek history. It is a golden age where the seeds of modern Western civilization were sown. This era witnessed the rise of influential city-states like Athens and Sparta, whose political, military, and cultural legacies still shape our world today. The Classical period saw Athens rise to unparalleled heights, especially under the leadership of Pericles, and become the cradle of democracy, philosophy, and art. It also marked a critical turning point in Greek history as it contended with external threats, internal strife, and the quest for cultural supremacy. The Persian Wars, 499 to 449 BCE. The Persian Wars were a series of conflicts fought between the Greek city-states and the Persian Empire, one of the largest empires the world had ever seen. These wars not only defined the fate of the Greek world, but also established the foundation for many of the political and cultural developments that would follow in Greek history. The wars took place in multiple phases, starting with the Ionian Revolt in 499 BCE, continuing through several key battles and culminating in a final showdown at Plataea in 479 BCE. The spark that ignited the Persian Wars came from the Greek cities in Asia Minor, known as the Ionians. These Greek cities were under the control of the Persian Empire, and their revolt against Persian rule in 499 BCE marked the beginning of open conflict. The Ionian cities sought the help of mainland Greece, and Athens responded by sending ships to assist in the revolt. Although the Ionian revolt ultimately failed, with the Persians recapturing the cities and punishing the rebels, it infuriated the Persian king Darius I. He was determined to punish the Greeks for interfering in Persian affairs and also to extend Persian power into mainland Greece, which he viewed as a threat to his empire. The first major battle of the Persian Wars took place at Marathon, a plain near Athens in 490 BCE. After the failure of the Ionian Revolt, King Darius I sent an expeditionary force of approximately 25,000 soldiers to punish Athens for its involvement. The Athenians, outnumbered and outmatched, faced the Persian army with only 10,000 soldiers and a few allies, including a small force from Plataea. Despite the odds, the Athenian general Miltiades led a brilliant and daring attack on the Persians. The Greeks formed a double envelopment formation, attacking the Persians from both sides while holding their center to ensure the enemy could not break through. The battle ended in a stunning Athenian victory, with the Persians losing around 6,400 men compared to just 192 Greek casualties. The Battle of Marathon was significant not only because it demonstrated the might of the Greek hoplite army, but also because it sent a powerful message to the Persians. The Greeks could stand up to them. After their defeat, the Persians withdrew from the Aegean, but the threat of future invasions remained. The Persians, under the leadership of Darius I's son Xerxes I, returned in 480 BCE with a much larger force, estimated to be between 100,000 and 200,000 soldiers. Xerxes aimed to complete what his father had started and to expand Persian rule into all of Greece. This time, the Greeks would not be so easily intimidated. The Greek city-states, despite their rivalries, formed an alliance to resist the Persian threat. King Leonidas of Sparta famously led a small force of 300 Spartans and about 7,000 other Greek soldiers to defend the narrow pass at Thermopylae. The location of the battle was strategic, as the narrow pass neutralized the Persians' numerical advantage. For 3 days, the Greek forces held off the overwhelming Persian army. However, a Greek traitor, Ephialtes, betrayed the defenders by revealing a hidden mountain pass that allowed the Persians to outflank the Greek position. King Leonidas and his 300 Spartans chose to stay behind and fight to the death, making a heroic last stand to protect the retreating Greek forces. Although the battle was a Persian victory, the heroic resistance of the Spartans became legendary and served as a symbol of Greek courage and unity. While the Persian army continued to march south, the Greeks regrouped and a decisive naval battle took place at Salamis, a narrow strait near Athens. The Persian navy, although larger in number, struggled to maneuver in the tight waters, and the Greeks, led by Themistocles, used their superior tactics to defeat the Persian fleet. The Athenian fleet, made up of triremes, fast, agile warships, lured the Persian navy into the strait and then ambushed them. The result was a crushing defeat for the Persians, who lost more than 300 ships compared to the Greeks' 40. The battle was a turning point in the war, as it marked the beginning of the end for Persian ambitions in Greece. It also showcased Athens' naval superiority, which would become a defining feature of its empire. In the final phase of the Persian Wars, the Greeks delivered a decisive blow at Plataea, a town in central Greece. The Greek forces, now led by the Spartan general Pausanias, faced the remaining Persian forces, who had been retreating after their defeat at Salamis. In the Battle of Plataea, the Greeks, though heavily outnumbered, decisively defeated the Persians, killing most of their forces and forcing the rest to retreat. The victory at Plataea, coupled with the earlier successes at Marathon and Salamis, effectively ended Persian efforts to conquer Greece. The Persian wars were over, and the Greek city-states, particularly Athens, emerged as the dominant powers in the eastern Mediterranean. The Persian wars had lasting effects on Greece and the broader world. The Greek victories brought a sense of unity and pride, though this unity was often short-lived due to the city-states' rivalries. Athens, in particular, emerged as the leading power in Greece and used its newfound influence to form the Delian League, a coalition of Greek city-states aimed at defending against future Persian invasions. However, Athens' growing power would eventually lead to tensions with Sparta and the outbreak of the Peloponnesian War, 431 to 404 BCE. Culturally, the Persian Wars helped fuel the golden age of Athens, as the city-state used the wealth from its empire to fund artistic, architectural, and philosophical advancements. The construction of the Parthenon and the flourishing of philosophy, particularly through figures like Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle, marked a high point in Greek civilization. The Persian Wars also had significant long-term consequences for Persia. Though the Persian Empire remained powerful for several centuries, the failure to conquer Greece signaled the limits of Persian expansion. Moreover, the Greek victory over Persia had a profound impact on Greek identity, making the defense of their homeland a central element of their culture and values. The Persian Wars also became the subject of Greek mythology and later historical writing. Herodotus, known as the father of history, wrote extensively about these wars in his histories, preserving the stories of heroism, tragedy, and divine intervention. The battles themselves became mythologized, with gods and goddesses playing roles in the outcome, and heroes like Themistocles, Leonidas, and Miltiades becoming larger-than-life figures. In particular, the Battle of Thermopylae was woven into Greek myths of heroism, with Leonidas's sacrifice remembered as an example of selflessness and bravery. This heroic resistance against overwhelming odds was seen as symbolic of the Greek spirit and determination to protect their way of life. The Peloponnesian War occurred after the Persian Wars and was fought between Athens, leading the Delian League, and Sparta, leading the Peloponnesian League, along with their respective allies. Athens was the leader of the Delian League, a coalition of city-states united primarily for defense against Persian aggression, while Sparta headed the Peloponnesian League, a group of city-states in the Peloponnesus that viewed Athens as a growing imperial threat. The war's devastating effects on Greek civilization would resonate for centuries. The roots of the Peloponnesian War lay in the growing tension between the Athenian Empire and the more traditional, conservative city-states of the Peloponnesian League, led by Sparta. Athens, after emerging victorious in the Persian Wars, had used its newfound power and wealth to expand its influence throughout the Aegean and beyond. Under the leadership of Pericles, Athens became a powerful naval empire, its democracy and wealth attracting both admiration and envy from other Greek states. On the other hand, Sparta, a militaristic society with an oligarchic government, was deeply suspicious of Athens' growing influence. The Spartans feared the rise of Athens as a regional superpower and viewed the Athenian Empire as a direct challenge to their way of life. This long-standing rivalry between Athens and Sparta, underpinned by different political ideologies and military strategies, set the stage for the war. The central conflict of the Peloponnesian War was between the two military alliances. Athens' Delian League initially began as a defensive coalition against the Persians, but soon evolved into an Athenian-dominated empire. Athens used the League's resources and naval strength to build a vast empire, which led many Greek city-states to resent their growing subjugation under Athenian rule. In contrast, Sparta and its allies in the Peloponnesian League represented a more conservative and militaristic bloc, opposing Athens' imperialism. Sparta, a city-state built on military might, had a powerful land-based army, while Athens boasted one of the most formidable navies in the ancient world. These two great powers, each with different strategies and political systems, were bound to clash. The Peloponnesian War had a profound impact on Greek society and culture. For nearly 30 years, the conflict drained the resources of both Athens and Sparta, leading to widespread devastation. The war was brutal and left much of Greece weakened, exhausted, and divided. Even the victors, Sparta, were unable to consolidate their power effectively. The war had left Greek city-states in a fragile state, and the once united Greek world was now ripe for conquest by outside forces. As the Greek city-states began to recover from the devastation of the Peloponnesian War, a new power emerged to shape the course of history: Macedon. A relatively obscure kingdom to the north of Greece began to rise under the leadership of King Philip II. Known for his military genius, Philip revolutionized warfare with innovations like the phalanx formation, which combined discipline, strategy, and brute force. By uniting the Macedonian tribes and reforming his army, Philip turned Macedon into a dominant military power. Through diplomacy and conquest, he subdued the fragmented Greek city-states, establishing the League of Corinth to unite Greece under his rule. But Philip's ambitions didn't end there. He aimed to lead a pan-Hellenic campaign against the Persian Empire. Tragically, his assassination in 336 BCE cut his plans short, leaving his young son Alexander to take the mantle. Alexander, only 20 years old when he became king, quickly proved himself a military prodigy. Over the next decade, he embarked on one of history's most extraordinary campaigns, conquering the Persian Empire and stretching his influence from Greece to Egypt and as far as India. Alexander not only brought vast territories under his control, but also spread Greek culture, philosophy, and governance throughout his empire. This blending of cultures gave birth to the Hellenistic Age, an era marked by cultural exchange and innovation. Despite his untimely death at 32, Alexander's conquests left an indelible mark on history, creating a legacy of unity and diversity that reshaped the ancient world. After Alexander's death, his empire fragmented into smaller kingdoms ruled by his generals, known as the Diadochi. The most prominent of these were Ptolemaic Egypt, centered in Alexandria, which became a hub of learning and culture; Seleucid Empire, spanning vast territories in Asia; Antigonid Macedon, which retained control of Greece. As the Hellenistic kingdoms weakened, the rising power of Rome began to assert dominance. By 146 BCE, Greece was absorbed into the Roman Republic after the defeat of the Achaean League. Though Greece lost its political independence, its cultural influence on Rome was profound. Greek philosophy, art, and literature became cornerstones of Roman education and governance. The Romans often said, "Captive Greece captured her conqueror." As we've explored the fascinating rise of Macedon, the conquests of Alexander the Great, and the enduring legacy of ancient Greece, it's clear how these stories continue to inspire and shape our understanding of history. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell for more content. Thank you for watching.